And so you've got to focus, first of all, on what is the data you're trying to protect. Not everything is of equal value. And what you find when you manage an enterprise is there's a little bit of a trade-off between the security and the convenience and accessibility people want. In a world or in an enterprise where everybody feels they have the right to work from home on their own device, they want to be mobile, they want to be able to grant privileges to whoever they want to grant privileges to, that's going to be in tension with security. So you've got to look holistically, and I tend to look broadly at three areas of focus. One is obviously you want to try to reduce the attack and the risk on your network from outside and build up your perimeter defenses, but you have to recognize that there are inherent limitations as to how effective that's going to be. So the second piece of this is you have to be living on your network. You have to be seeing what's going on when things are leaving, what behavior there is in terms of traffic when there are anomalies, and you may want to stitch that up with your physical security. If, for example, someone appears to be logging on from a computer inside the building, but the person who is supposed to have access to that computer is not in the building because you've coordinated between your physical access controls and your computer access, then you strike, you see an anomaly. And a lot of this is about an awareness of what is going on physically and virtually in your enterprise from the standpoint of looking for anomalies or differences. The third issue is how do you deal with the human factor? It's kind of a counterintelligence problem. And increasingly, what I've seen is that you've got to look at the people who are trusted, not in a paranoid way, but in a way that recognizes that when you grant people with particularly high privileges and ability to access data, you need to be secure that these are reliable and loyal people. And that does involve doing some looking at people's background as well as their behavior and things of that sort. So you've got to bring all these together. The last point I would make is there is no 100% guarantee. You will not eliminate all the risk. You're managing it. And part of managing means that when there is a breach, which there inevitably will be, how do you reduce the consequences? And what is your plan for dealing with mitigation of harm? So when you put all these together, that gives you the kind of plan you need, which will involve some technology, some human behavior, and some governance decision-making that will give you the maximum amount of risk reduction without compromising what are the kind of fundamental operational requirements of your business.
Great advice. And in fact, some of those things are already starting to take place. If you look at, obviously, the government, when they're doing a background investigation on a person to whom they're going to grant a secret or top secret clearance, they don't just do it once. They do it every few years because people's circumstances change. If somebody is facing a divorce or financial ruin, losing their house, they might not normally look at, a bribe of $100,000 or $2 million as interesting, but their circumstances change. And in terms of the multi-factor authentication that the Secretary was mentioning, that's even starting to come out into the consumer space. So some banks, they ask you to register your mobile phone. And if you go to use the ATM and your mobile phone is not present, then they send out a warning or they won't approve the transaction. Mikko, what are your thoughts on this?
The Secretary is right. You can't secure a network 100%. If we could, we would, but we won't. And this isn't actually clear to people. Why can't we build a completely secure system? Like, how come we have all these vulnerabilities and these technical weaknesses? And the best way to explain it is probably that if you think back before the time of the internet, you think about computers 20 years ago, first versions of Windows, for example, they would crash every now and then. You remember that. They would crash and burn, and you're writing text on Word and it would crash and you would lose your data. But that was just a bug. Your system would just crash because the program wasn't written very well. But that was the limit of the damage. Your system crashed. Now, when the internet came around, all these systems that we have on our computers are connected to the internet. And now the very same bugs, which of course are bugs because the people who program these programs are human. They make mistakes. And the same bugs that used to just crash your computer are, every single one of them is now potentially a way in to your system. So the same errors that the programmers make don't just crash your system. They could be used to take over your system, or not maybe your computer, but the servers of your organization or the systems running our critical infrastructure. So it all goes back to the human problem. It's human beings writing these codes. And no matter how well we try to build a perfect system, we won't be able to do it. And if the attackers have the resources and the skills and the funding to go after the system, they will find a weakness in every system. You take the best locksmith in the world, and he will create you a lock that he can't pick. But then you take the 10 next best locksmiths of the world, you give them unlimited funding and unlimited time, they will figure out a way to pick that lock. Exactly the same thing applies to computers.
So that's a really interesting paradigm change, because the old paradigm was, let's try to build secure code, let's try to lock down the systems, we'll buy antivirus, we'll get intrusion detection systems, we'll build firewalls. But as Shawn points out, these guys are still living in your system anyway. So don't we need a new methodology, Shawn?
I think that's absolutely right. And there needs to be a paradigm shift. The offense will outpace the defense, as Mikko, I think, just articulated very well. And the adversaries, where we used to think about building a higher wall, what we've seen is the adversary jumping right over the wall. So if you think about in the physical world, you've got a guard booth inside your office building, and they're watching the doors, they're watching the fence on their monitors. These adversaries are like invisible men. They walk past the front door, they go through a circuitous route, and they're able to access. It's not good enough to check your system every couple of months, every 6 months, even every week. You have to do constant monitoring. And what I've said is you've got to hunt on the network. We have to assume that the adversaries have breached the perimeter and are inside your network, because you cannot keep them out. Therefore, what you've got to do is identify them as quickly as possible and try to mitigate that threat. And what we've been talking about for a long time is changing the way we look at this, becoming more proactive, which allows you to become predictive. Who is the adversary? What are they targeting? How are they targeting it? And that allows you to actually become more preventative, being able to mitigate the threat early on and to limit the damages that are going to occur. But this is a constant battle inside the perimeter with your people, with technical folks. The last piece is absolutely, we do not have a malware problem, we have an adversary problem. It's not enough to identify what bullets are coming out of the gun. We have to find the people that are holding the gun, and we've got to mitigate that threat, because until we do that, this is never going away.
I just want to stop for a moment and have everybody take in what Shawn just said, because it's really quite revolutionary. It is a major paradigm shift in the world of cybersecurity. It used to be much more about buying the firewalls, buying the software, and what he's talking about is a much more active approach. It's really revolutionary, and I agree that moving forward, that will be the only way that you'll be able to defend your network, is by constantly hunting for these people. As Mikko pointed out, and as Shawn pointed out, with whether it's through critical infrastructures or the complexity of the code that's being written, we're living more and more of our lives online. So if you look at the pervasivity of computers in our lives, it's increased. It used to be the big gray box on our desk, then it was the laptop, then it was the cell phone, now it's the iPad. But in the future, through the Google car, it's going to be automated driving, right? The whole driving network is going to be fully automated. It'll be the whole information grid. In the United States today, it may surprise you to know that there are 60,000 people who have pacemakers implanted in them that are connected to the internet, okay? When your pacemaker's connected to the internet, what are the cybersecurity relations or possibilities with that? Modern automobile today in 2012 has over 250 chips inside of it that control everything from the airbag to the automatic braking system. And I'm sure Mikko can tell you quite a deal about how much information there is out there on Shark and going out there and attacking those systems.
But once